The Varanian fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Sol's system, their massive obsidian ships forming a crescent around Earth's outer defense perimeter. Admiral Krellthax stood on the command deck of his flagship, golden eyes narrowed at the relatively primitive human vessels that moved to intercept them. "Commence standard pre-conquest transmission," he ordered. Across Earth, communication systems were overridden as Commander John Ellis of the North American Defense Alliance received the transmission in the Pentagon's crisis room. Species designation: human. Your civilization has been deemed worthy of absorption into the Varanian Galactic Empire. Surrender your military assets and prepare for integration. Resistance results in standard cleansing protocols. Ellis exchanged glances with Lieutenant Olivia Martinez, his second in command. "They certainly don't waste time with pleasantries." "Sir," Martinez said, "fleet readiness reports indicate we're at 97% capacity. The Mars defensive grid is fully operational." Ellis nodded and pressed the transmit button. "This is Commander John Ellis representing Earth. We respectfully decline your offer and suggest you withdraw immediately." Admiral Krellthax's mandibles clicked in amusement. The humans' primitive vessels posed no threat to his armada. In 3,000 cycles, no species had successfully resisted integration. "Prepare cleansing protocols," he ordered. The transmission that came back wasn't what he expected. "Admiral," Ellis's voice came through clearly, "you misunderstand. We're not threatening you. We're warning you. Humanity has never fought an interstellar war before, but we've been preparing for one since we first looked at the stars. Run." Krellthax dismissed the warning with a wave of his upper limb. Humans were like all the others, full of brave words before the inevitable. "Begin approach vector," he commanded. Standard conquest formation. His fleet moved forward in perfect unison, the result of thousands of years of military evolution. The black ships reflected no light, designed to strike fear into primitive species. On Earth, Ellis activated the Global Defense Network. Screens around him lit up as military commanders from across the planet joined the secure channel. "All stations, this is Commander Ellis. First contact protocols have failed. The Varanian Empire has declared hostile intent. Activate Defense Plan Omega." Acknowledgements came in from around the globe. Humanity had trained for this moment for generations. "Sir," Martinez reported, "deep space arrays detect additional Varanian vessels emerging from hyperspace." Ellis nodded grimly. "As expected, they always bring overwhelming force." He turned to the communications officer. "Send one final warning." The young officer nodded. "Channel open." "Sir." Ellis stood straight, his voice calm and measured. "Varanian fleet, this is your final warning. Humanity has prepared defense systems specifically designed to counter your technology. We have studied your species and your conquest patterns. We know your weaknesses. If you proceed, we will be forced to demonstrate our capabilities." On his command ship, Admiral Krellthax laughed. The audacity of these humans was almost admirable. In 3,000 years of conquest, many had threatened. None had succeeded. "No response, sir," the communications officer reported. Ellis nodded. "Very well. Lieutenant Martinez, you have authorization to activate Luna-based defenses." Deep beneath the lunar surface, massive generators hummed to life. Systems that had waited decades for this moment powered up. The Varanian fleet moved closer, weapon systems charging. "Sir," Martinez said quietly, "should we evacuate civilian centers?" Ellis shook his head. "No need. They won't get close enough to threaten the surface." He looked at the tactical display showing the approaching alien fleet. "Let's show them why humanity never needed to expand beyond our solar system. We were too busy preparing." Admiral Krellthax dismissed the humans' warning as the typical bravado displayed by species before subjugation. The Varanian Empire had conquered over 300 civilizations, many technologically superior to these humans. "Launch preliminary assault craft," he commanded. As the first wave of Varanian fighters advanced toward Earth's orbital defenses, Commander Ellis sat calmly in the command center, surrounded by his top officers, Lieutenant Martinez, Communications Specialist Alan Rivera, and Defense Systems Coordinator Patricia Wright. "They're not taking us seriously," Ellis observed. "Right. Initiate Defense Protocol Sierra." Wright nodded, inputting commands into her console. "Sierra Protocol active, sir." Aboard the Varanian flagship, Tactical Officer Jerkel reported confidently. "Assault craft approaching human orbital platforms. No significant defensive measures detected." Krelfax's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. "As expected. Begin charging the cleansing." He never finished his sentence as 50% of his first wave simply disappeared. "What happened?" he demanded. "Unknown, Admiral." Jerkel's appendages flew over the control surfaces. "The human installations did not fire. Our ships just ceased to exist." On Earth, Ellis watched the quantum displacement field's effectiveness with satisfaction. Dr. Samantha Miller, the head scientist responsible for the technology, stood behind him. "Quantum displacement successful," she reported. "The field collapsed their molecular structure exactly as designed." Ellis nodded and opened a channel. "Admiral Krelfax, that was a demonstration of one defensive system. We have dozens more you haven't seen. I'm offering you one final opportunity to withdraw." The Admiral's response was immediate. "This changes nothing. The Empire does not retreat." Ellis sighed. "I was afraid you'd say that. Miller, you're cleared for Artemis Protocol." On the dark side of Luna, massive doors slid open in the crater Tycho, revealing the culmination of humanity's decades-long preparation for this very moment. The gathered officers watched the main screen as the lunar defense system activated. Blue lights flickered across the moon's surface, visible even from Earth. "Artemis Protocol engaged," Miller confirmed. "Targeting systems locked on all Varanian vessels." Krelfax stared in disbelief as his sensors detected an enormous energy surge from the moon. "Impossible," he muttered. "Their technology is not advanced enough for." A brilliant beam of concentrated energy shot from the lunar surface, cutting through space and slicing a Varanian destroyer in half. Before the Admiral could react, 5 more beams fired in rapid succession, each finding its target with perfect precision. "Evasive maneuvers," Krelfax shouted. "All ships, scatter formation." But the lunar defense system tracked each vessel, the beams adjusting course to follow their targets. Ship after ship exploded or went dark. "Sir," Martinez reported to Ellis, "the Artemis system is functioning at optimal capacity. 23 enemy vessels neutralized." Ellis nodded. "And the flagship?" "Still operational. The system is deliberately avoiding it per your instructions." Ellis opened the communication channel again. "Admiral Krelfax, do you understand now? We've spent centuries preparing for this moment. Every war we fought among ourselves taught us lessons about defense. Every scientific breakthrough was evaluated for its military potential." On his damaged flagship, Krelfax watched his mighty fleet being systematically dismantled. Nothing in his 3 centuries of military service had prepared him for this. These humans, who by all accounts should be primitive, were displaying technology beyond even the Empire's capabilities. "Admiral," his second-in-command urged, "we must retreat and report this to the Conclave." For the first time in his long career, Krelfax considered the unthinkable option: retreat. But even as he weighed his choices, more lunar beams lanced through space, cutting off his escape routes. The human's words echoed in his mind: "Run." But there was nowhere to run. The Varanian tactical officers stared in confusion as their sensors detected unusual energy readings from Earth's moon. Before they could analyze the data, 6 high-velocity projectiles launched from the lunar surface. "Primitive kinetic weapons," Krelfax scoffed. "Raised deflectors." But these weren't simple projectiles. Each one split into hundreds of smaller units that maneuvered independently, easily bypassing Varanian shields designed to repel energy weapons. Impossible, Jurkel shouted as the projectiles attached themselves to 6 Varanian warships. Within seconds, the ships went dark, all systems failing simultaneously. In the command center, Ellis watched with Commander Kyle Bennett of Lunar Operations. Nanite disruptors performing as expected, Bennett reported. The targeted vessels are completely neutralized. Ellis nodded. Good. Now let's show them what happens when they threaten our home. Meanwhile, the Varanian fleet regrouped, preparing to launch a full-scale assault. Admiral Krulthax was bewildered but determined. In 3 millennia of conquest, the Empire had never encountered such effective resistance from a seemingly inferior species. All ships concentrate fire on their orbital platforms, he ordered. As the Varanian fleet moved into position, Ellis gave the order that would become legendary throughout the galaxy. Release the Sol Defense Network. Across the system, hidden installations on Mars, Europa, Ganymede, and the asteroid belt activated simultaneously. Hundreds of autonomous defense platforms emerged from concealment surrounding the Varanian fleet. Sir, Martins reported, SDN is fully deployed and targeting solutions locked. Ellis took a deep breath. Fire. The space around the Varanian fleet erupted with weapons technology, unlike anything they had encountered in thousands of years of conquest. Phase-shifted energy beams bypassed their shields entirely. Gravity wells formed spontaneously inside their ships, crushing vital systems. Quantum disruptors unraveled the very atomic structure of their hulls. In the chaos, Krulthax received another transmission from Ellis. Admiral, we warned you. Humanity has spent centuries preparing for this moment. Every war we fought among ourselves was practice. Every scientific breakthrough was evaluated for its defensive potential. We've been ready for you before we even knew you existed. The transmission ended as another Varanian dreadnought imploded. We must retreat. Jurkel pleaded. We cannot counter their technology. Krulthax stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Half his fleet was already destroyed or disabled. The humans' defenses were unlike anything documented in Imperial records. Order all remaining vessels to form defensive perimeter, he commanded. Prepare for emergency hyperspace jump. But the humans had anticipated this move. As the Varanian ships attempted to align for hyperspace entry, localized gravity distortions prevented the formation of stable jump points. They've blocked our hyperspace access, the navigation officer reported, panic evident in his voice. On Earth, Dr. Miller monitored the gravity distortion network. The containment field is stable, Commander. They won't be going anywhere. Ellis nodded and addressed the room. Phase 3, everyone. Let's finish this. Across the solar system, the full extent of humanity's preparations became apparent. Defensive satellites previously hidden in Mars' atmosphere rose to engage. Asteroid bases revealed massive weapon arrays. Even the seemingly uninhabited moons of the outer planets lit up with energy signatures as they targeted the remaining Varanian vessels. Sir, Martins reported, the enemy flagship is attempting to broadcast a distress signal to Varanian space. Ellis considered this. Let it through. I want the Empire to see what happens when they threaten Earth. As Krulthax watched his mighty armada crumble under the human onslaught, he finally understood the warning they had given. The humans hadn't been begging for mercy. They had been offering it. And the Empire hadn't listened. 3 hours into the battle, the remaining Varanian vessels retreated to the edge of the solar system. Admiral Krulthax, his flagship damaged but operational, called an emergency council with his surviving commanders. We underestimated these humans, he admitted, a rare concession for a Varanian admiral. But the Empire will not be defied. We will regroup and return with our full strength. His communications officer interrupted urgently. Admiral, we're detecting multiple warp signatures emerging throughout our retreat corridor. Outside the viewports, space distorted as dozens of human vessels materialized, cutting off their escape route. These weren't the defensive platforms they'd encountered before, but sleek, predatory warships with Earth fleet emblazoned on their hulls. Commander Ellis's voice came through the communication system. "You seem surprised, Admiral. Did you think we'd just let you leave to bring back reinforcements?" On the bridge of the Earth Fleet flagship Defiance, Captain Diane Russell stood confidently as her tactical officer, Lieutenant George Wilson, reported, "All enemy vessels contained within our formation, Captain. Weapons locked." Russell nodded to her communications officer. "Open a channel to Commander Ellis." In the Earth Command Center, Ellis received the transmission. "Defiance reports ready to engage, sir. The Varanian fleet is surrounded." Ellis considered his options. Total annihilation of the Varanian forces would send a message, but he had something more effective in mind. "Captain Russell, select the Admiral's flagship and 2 escort vessels for capture. Neutralize the rest." As the Earth fleet moved to execute their orders, Admiral Krell Thax watched in growing horror. The human vessels displayed technology that, by all intelligence reports, they shouldn't possess for at least another 5 centuries. How is this possible? He demanded of no one in particular. Their civilization was assessed as pre-interstellar. His tactical officer, voice trembling, replied, "Admiral, we're detecting quantum entanglement drives, negative mass propulsion. Technologies the Empire itself has only theorized." As Varanian ships began disappearing in flashes of precise weapons fire, Krellthax received one final transmission from Ellis. "You thought we were primitive because we hadn't expanded beyond our system. The truth is, Admiral, we've been busy preparing. Your Empire mistakes our containment for limitation. Your analysts confused our focus for weakness." The Defiance moved alongside the Admiral's crippled flagship, magnetic grapples engaging to secure the vessel. "Your Empire is about to learn a valuable lesson," Ellis continued. "Humanity doesn't need to conquer the stars to defend what's ours." Inside the Varanian flagship, panic spread among the crew. Many had never experienced defeat, let alone such a complete one. "What happens now?" asked Shurkel, looking to his admiral for guidance. Krellthax had no answer. The Empire's protocols never accounted for total defeat. There were no contingency plans for this scenario. Earth vessels surrounded the captured Varanian ships, deploying specialized boarding craft. Teams of humans in advanced combat suits entered through airlocks and breach points. Commander Ellis led the boarding party onto the Varanian flagship. The alien crew, recognizing their defeat, offered no resistance. Ellis approached Admiral Krellthax on the command deck. The once proud Varanian commander seemed diminished, his golden eyes dulled by the shock of defeat. "Admiral Krellthax," Ellis said formally, "you and your crew are now prisoners of Earth. You will be treated according to our laws on humane treatment of captives." Krellthax's mandibles clicked slowly. "You could have destroyed us all. Why didn't you?" Ellis's expression remained neutral. "Because unlike your Empire, we don't destroy what we can learn from." He gestured toward the view screen where the last Varanian vessels were being disabled. "Consider this a lesson in humility, and a message for your Empire." As human personnel secured the flagship, Ellis looked out at the stars. The Varanian threat had been neutralized, but he knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy now knew of humanity's existence and its capabilities. 3 days after the battle, Admiral Krellthax and his surviving officers were escorted through a massive underground facility beneath the North American continent. The complex stretched for kilometers in every direction, filled with technology beyond even the Empire's capabilities. Commander Ellis walked beside the captured admiral, with Lieutenant Martinez and Dr. Miller following close behind. "This is just one of hundreds of similar facilities around our planet," Ellis explained. "We call this one the Aegis Complex." Krellthax's compound eyes shifted nervously from one marvel to another. "Your species was classified as Development Category 3. How did you conceal all this?" Dr. Miller smiled thinly. "We didn't have to conceal much. Your Empire's assessment protocols are embarrassingly predictable. You measure technological advancement by territorial expansion and visible infrastructure. We simply kept our most advanced developments underground and within our system. They entered a vast chamber where scientists worked around what appeared to be a contained singularity. This is our quantum computation center, Ellis continued. While your empire was conquering hundreds of worlds with brute force, we were focusing on efficiency, miniaturization, and understanding the fundamental nature of reality. Martinez added, your invasion actually did us a favor. We've been debating for decades whether to reach out to galactic civilization. You forced our hand. They stopped at a view screen showing real-time footage of Varanian worlds. Krellvax's mandibles clicked in alarm. How are you seeing this? These are core Imperial worlds. Ellis nodded to Miller, who explained, quantum entanglement observation. We've been watching your empire for nearly 50 years. We know everything about you, your military capabilities, your government structure, your technological limitations. Krellvax's exoskeleton seemed to pale. Impossible. Not at all, Ellis replied. We've had probes in your territory since we detected your first scout ships entering our galactic arm. Did you really think a species as paranoid as humanity wouldn't notice? The Admiral seemed to deflate. What do you want from us? Ellis's expression hardened. Two things. First, the Empire will acknowledge Sol system and all human colonies as sovereign and off-limits. Second, you'll end your practice of cleansing civilizations that refuse integration. The Imperial Conclave will never agree to. Ellis interrupted by bringing up another screen showing human fleets positioned near key Imperial worlds. They'll agree, Admiral, because right now, they don't realize how vulnerable they are. You're going to tell them. Krellvax stared at the display in shock. Human vessels were positioned throughout Imperial space, completely undetected by their most advanced sensor networks. You could destroy our entire civilization, he said quietly. Ellis shook his head. That's the difference between us, Admiral. We could, but we won't. Humanity doesn't seek conquest. We just want to be left alone, and to ensure you stop conquering others. Dr. Miller approached with a data device. This contains evidence of your empire's activities across the galaxy, including the 17 civilizations you've cleansed in the past century alone. We've prepared a transmission for you to deliver to your Imperial Conclave, Ellis continued. You will explain what happened here, and you will deliver our terms. Krellvax's mandibles twitched in what humans now recognized as resignation. And if I refuse? Ellis's expression didn't change. Then we select another messenger. But we thought you might prefer to maintain some dignity by delivering the message yourself. The Admiral considered his options, then slowly nodded. I will deliver your message. Ellis nodded once. Good. Let's hope your empire is wise enough to listen. For their sake, the Imperial Conclave on Varan Prime fell silent as Admiral Krellvax's transmission ended. 27 Conclave members, representatives of the oldest and most powerful houses in the Empire, sat stunned by the footage of their defeated fleet. Grand Conclave leader Dex Un finally broke the silence. This must be fabricated. No Category 3 civilization could defeat an Imperial armada. But the evidence was undeniable. The transmission included detailed scans of human technology and defensive capabilities, all verified by Imperial systems. Most disturbing were the coordinates showing human stealth vessels already positioned throughout Imperial space. They could have struck anywhere, at any time, a junior Conclave member whispered. Commander Ellis had ensured that Krellvax's transmission included one final message directly from Earth. Now, Ellis's image appeared before the Conclave. Distinguished leaders of the Varanian Empire, I am Commander John Ellis of Earth. By now, Admiral Krellvax has shared our terms. They are non-negotiable. Ellis stood flanked by Captain Russell and Dr. Miller, the Earth fleet visible through viewports behind them. Humanity has no interest in conquest. We don't want your worlds or resources. We simply wish to be left alone and to prevent the further subjugation of developing civilizations. The conclave members exchanged uneasy glances as Ellis continued. To demonstrate our commitment to these terms, we've taken the liberty of accessing your military command network. In exactly 1 minute, every weapon system in your Imperial Armada will temporarily deactivate. This is not an attack, merely a demonstration. Grand Conclave Leader Dexon frantically activated his communication terminal. Security override Delta 9. Lock out all external access immediately. His security chief responded with panic. It's too late, sir. The humans aren't hacking our systems. They've completely rewritten the underlying quantum architecture. Exactly 1 minute later, reports flooded in from across the Empire as battleships, defense platforms, and even personal sidearms simultaneously powered down for precisely 10 seconds before reactivating. Ellis's expression remained calm. We could have made that permanent. Remember that before you consider your response to our terms. As the transmission ended, the conclave erupted in chaotic debate. In a private chamber adjacent to the conclave hall, elder strategist Vex Moria, the Empire's oldest and wisest advisor, spoke quietly to Dexon. In 3,000 years, I have never seen anything like this, the ancient Varanian admitted. These humans, they could have destroyed us, but chose restraint. Dexon's mandibles clicked nervously. What would you advise? Accept their terms, Vex Moria said without hesitation, and pray they remain uninterested in conquest. The Empire has never faced a species that prepared so thoroughly before we even knew of their existence. Meanwhile, on Earth, Ellis waited in the command center with his team. The mood was tense as they awaited the Empire's response. Do you think they'll agree? Martins asked. Ellis watched the screens displaying the positions of Earth's hidden fleets throughout Imperial space. They don't have much choice, but empires rarely accept limitations gracefully. Dr. Miller studied data flowing across her terminal. Our analysis suggests an 87% probability they'll accept our terms, at least officially. And unofficially? Ellis asked. They'll likely begin developing countermeasures immediately, Miller replied. That's what we would do. Ellis nodded, which is why we're not removing our observation network. Trust, but verify. The communication system chimed, indicating an incoming transmission from Perrin Prime. The team fell silent as the message began. Grand Conclave Leader Dexon appeared on screen, his posture formal and rigid. Commander Ellis, the Imperial Conclave has reviewed your terms. While unprecedented in our history, we accept them in full. Ellis maintained a neutral expression. A wise decision, Conclave Leader. We look forward to a new era of peaceful coexistence. After the transmission ended, Captain Russell voiced what everyone was thinking. They didn't have a choice, did they? No, Ellis replied. But sometimes the best way to avoid war is to be so thoroughly prepared for it that no one dares start one. 6 months after what became known as the 6-Hour War, a different kind of Varanian vessel entered Earth orbit. Unlike the imposing warships of Admiral Krelfax's fleet, this was a diplomatic vessel, escorted by Earth ships to the newly constructed Orbital Diplomatic Station Unity. Commander Ellis, now promoted to Admiral, stood in the station's grand reception hall alongside Dr. Miller, Lieutenant Martinez, now captain, and representatives from Earth's various nations. The Varanian delegation was led by Imperial Diplomatic Envoy Trazkor, appointed directly by the Conclave. Admiral Ellis. Trazkor began, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into smooth English. On behalf of the Varanian Empire, I present the ratified Treaty of Sol, acknowledging the sovereignty of humanity and agreeing to your terms regarding the treatment of developing civilizations. Ellis accepted the ornate document. The nations of Earth welcome this new chapter in our relationship with the wider galaxy. Later, in a private meeting room, Ellis sat with the core team that had helped humanity weather first contact. Dr. Miller, Captain Martins, and Captain Russell. They're still trying to understand how we did it, Martinez observed. Their cultural paradigm can't comprehend a species developing beyond their technological potential without expanding. Dr. Miller nodded. Their entire civilization is built on the concept that territory equals advancement. The idea that we chose to perfect our technology within our system rather than expand prematurely genuinely confuses them. Russell chuckled. I almost feel sorry for them. 3,000 years of conquest, and they never encountered anyone who prepared like we did. Ellis looked through the viewport at Earth below. Humanity has always excelled at two things: preparing for threats and adapting. Our entire history is filled with preparing for worst-case scenarios. So what now? Martins asked. We've achieved security. The Empire won't threaten us again. Ellis smiled. Now we do what humans have always dreamed of doing. We explore, but we do it carefully, thoughtfully, without the Empire's need to conquer everything they discover. On the other side of the station, Envoy Trazkor was having a similar conversation with his advisors. These humans are unlike any species we've encountered, he admitted. They could have destroyed our civilization, but instead forced us to become better. His chief cultural analyst agreed. Already, the reforms they demanded are showing positive results. The 17 civilizations we've contacted since the treaty have all joined the Empire voluntarily through actual diplomacy rather than coercion. Perhaps, Trazkor suggested, in their warning for us to run, they were actually showing us a different path forward. As the diplomatic station orbited Earth, humanity and the Varanian Empire began a new chapter, not as conqueror and conquered, but as civilizations with much to learn from each other. The stars no longer represented territory to be claimed, but mysteries to be explored together. And throughout the galaxy, the story spread of the small, isolated civilization that had prepared so thoroughly for war that they'd never needed to fight one. Until they did, and ended it in 6 hours with a single warning. Run. 1 month later, Admiral Ellis stood in his office at Earth Defense Command, looking at a star map showing dozens of newly discovered civilizations beyond Imperial space. We were lucky, he told Dr. Miller as she entered with new reports. If the Varanians had studied us more carefully before attacking, they might have approached us differently. Miller smiled. Perhaps, but our paranoia served us well. While they were busy conquering, we were preparing. Ellis nodded. And now we can finally do what we've always wanted. He pointed to an unexplored region of the galaxy. Not to conquer or control, but to learn and understand. Miller looked at the star map with a sense of wonder. The irony isn't lost on me. We spent centuries preparing for war, only to become better peacekeepers than the Empire ever was. The best defense isn't always a good offense, Ellis replied. Sometimes it's simply being so well prepared that your enemies realize they should have listened when you warned them to run.